All right, so now it's time to place these foot joints. And I'm going to start with the toe. So I'm going to grab this toe. I'm going to move it to about where I want the toe to swivel from. All right. And for the rest of this stuff, I am going to turn on the sneaker, and I'm going to template this layer so I can see the foot. Now it's important that this model does all its foot pivoting and banking, right? So if we're doing a heel pivot or a toe pivot, or we're banking from side to side, it needs to do it considering where the sneaker would be pivoting from and not the foot. For the most part, this character is always going to have her sneakers on. And at this stage, it is a very important choice to make. Like, do I either want it to be swiveling from her foot, which, even though it's cool to be able to do this, if the character for the most part is always going to have her sneakers on, it will be a wasted feature. So we need to be here where the sneaker actually is. It does mean that if you do take off her shoes and try to have her barefooted, you won't have an accurate foot roll as you're swiveling back and forth, but it's not a hard problem to fix as an animator. And also, Advanced Skeleton has this switch pivot feature, which will allow you to switch the pivot of a control. So if her sneakers ever came off, I could always use the switch pivot to have her pivoting from the right place. It won't give you all the foot functionality, but it will give you a fair amount of it. You get to pivot from certain locations. Now, this is also very important because this character is being rigged to wear other clothing, and in the future, she's going to be wearing heels. And when the heel is on, we're going to be pivoting from here. So you being able to use that switch pivot to move it here will become very important. All right, so I'm going to position this at the base of the sneaker right here on the back side. And I'm going to do the same thing with the toe. This should be swiveling from around there. Now, all these look incorrectly oriented, but when we hit the update now button, you'll see a lot of things will be positioned correctly. This looks like a pretty good spot, considering that this is a real foot. The foot is arched like a real human foot. So I think this is a pretty good place to be doing a foot roll from. So is this. For this one, I'm going to position it on the outskirts. The sneaker yet again. Around here it seems to be fine. I'll go back to the front view, and I think we do have to move this down here and perhaps maybe a little bit closer in. All right, so that is it with the foot placement. What I'm going to do now is something I should have done previously, just so we can inspect. But I'm going to turn on the joint axis so I can see the local rotation axis of all these, and all these look correct. The local rotation axis for this is supposed to be set to world, so that's correct. But I'm going to hit update now early. You can hit it as many times as you want as you're positioning to see the joints reorient correctly. But I'll be hitting it a lot of times. But for now, let me just hit it now. I'll go update now. Yes, and it's reoriented everything, but it also made the joints smaller. So I'm going to make them back to their original size. All right, so I think that's it with the joint placement for the legs. And now it's time to move to the spine. All right, so now it's time to position the first joint of the spine. I'm going to hide the clothes again. I'm going to go to the front view, and I'm going to place this right around where the rib cage ends, right, where the last rib cage is going to end. This is going to be very important because when it's time to do my corrective morphs, one of my corrective morphs is to have like some good creasing when we swivel about this joint. To have some nice creasing here to show where the obliques and the rib cage interact, to give good creasing. And I'll show a lot of reference to show how things behave, so you know what we're shooting for. I'm gonna go to the left view, try to get that also in the center of the mesh, right there. There's an attribute that I'm going to increase, and it's called an in-between attribute right there. It's already set to 2, so we don't actually have to increase it, but I'm postponing the adding of attributes and labels for after all the joint placement is done. So you won't see me doing any changes now. We're going to focus on joint placement. But just know that by default, this in-between joints are set to 2. So it's going to give us an additional 2 joints in between the root and this first spine joint. And the same for the between this first spine joint and the chest. All right. So I'm going to go back to the front view. I'm going to move this down to a place where I believe the chest should swivel from. This is pretty good. Try to stay under the pectoralis, not the breast. This is breast tissue, but the pectoralis is probably somewhere around here. So maybe I should go a little bit higher around there. And I'm also going to try to keep an even spacing between the two. I also have to consider that, but I don't think that's more important than getting the correct location that you want to swivel from. But you can decide to do that. As far as with this relationship between the root, the spine, and this chest, you can try to go even, but for me, I do have specific locations that I wanted. It just so happens that it makes for a nice even distribution. All right, so this is a good spot. I'll move it up just a little bit more. Go to the left view and make sure it's in the center of the mesh. I'm going to grab the neck and place it at the pit of the neck right there. And when it comes to the head, for this character, this is a very stylized character. So the head anatomy is not realistic. If it was realistic, I'd be aiming to put this head bone around here. But here, I want to put it right at the separation of this head mass and the neck. So this line over here. All right, but if you had a realistic character, you'd definitely be aiming for some place, I think around where the occipital bone of the skull is. It's an occipital something, but you'd be putting it over there because that's where the head swivels from. That's where the skull connects to the spine, I think. So that's that, and I'm going to move this to the top of the head. Now with my jawbone, that is going to be positioned at a place that I know I have to swivel from to get a good mouth closing. You saw me doing this in ZBrush in the previous lesson or previous 2 lessons, but I do have this location stored in memory, and it's around here. It's sort of like in this region here. But this ensures that when I close the mouth, I don't have an underbite or an overbite. I just have a correct actual closing of the mouth, and it's around this spot here. I think this is another feature that will be altered by the face building or the face fitting phase. Like when you start positioning points for face fitting in advanced skeleton, I think it will adjust this joint. So we'll see what happens when we get there. But for now, I'm going to stick with this correct spot to pivot from right there. We go into the front view and inspect. And this is good, but I feel like this pit of this neck, I'm going to hold down D and move it more so it's a little bit up. Go to the left view. Okay, that looks like a good spot. Not so bad. All right, so that's it. Let's move to the eyes and the ears. That will require a little bit more complexity with placement. All right, so we'll continue placing the fit skeleton in the next lesson.